This is episode number 3 of How to Run a Salesforce Freelance Business, a podcast mini-series on salesforceben.com. My name is Brian Shea. I'm a Salesforce Architect, a self-employed consultant, and I am the host. In this episode, we're talking about personal branding with 2 individuals that have built wonderful brands within the Salesforce ecosystem. David Liu of SFDC 99 and Ben McCarthy of salesforceben.com. In this episode, we talk about how freelancers can build their personal brand within the Salesforce ecosystem.
So when I started my website, SFDC 99, I really wasn't like a branding or marketing expert. I still don't really consider myself one. It was just kind of something I stumbled into. I had a problem that I wanted to solve, and I just like devoted everything towards it. And that problem was I as a very simpleton, wanted to learn how to code. And I had gone through that transition myself in my career. And I thought, hey, other people might want to learn how to do this transition too. So I just spun up a website and started posting really, really consistently. And that was really my main motivation. Maybe one more motivation is at that time I was also applying for a lot of jobs and my resume was really empty. So I needed to.
And when did you start that website?
This had to have been around 2012.
Oh, okay.
Surprising. It's been 8 years. And maybe the most interesting thing about that is like the first 2 years or so, just, no one read anything on the site, but I just kept posting every week.
Yeah. I was going to ask you how, once a week?
About once a week. Yeah.
Okay. And Ben, I know, Ben, you give your backstory too. I was gonna ask you about something you wrote in an article about consistency, but let's get your backstory too.
Yeah, sure. I suppose it was similar to David, really. So when I was an admin, I was implementing lots of different things on Salesforce. And when I came across something that there wasn't a lot of documentation, no tutorial, something like that, I felt it would be nice to write something because, I would kind of research lots of different articles and it would take me quite a while to implement this feature. Feature I'm thinking about is recurring milestones. And that was the first post that I wrote. So after I kind of worked it all out, worked all the kinks out, looking at all these different articles, I wrote kind of a post about how to implement it. And kind of similar to David, I think I was posting about once a week. But the thing that I found was I got very addicted to people going on the site. I had Google Analytics up all the time, the real-time view. And you'd see, someone in the US, someone in India visiting the site. And I was like, this is so cool. So that's kind of what spurred me on to do it. But it was definitely trying to simplify tutorials to the Salesforce community.
I was that person in the US, by the way. That was me.
Yes.
It's funny when you mentioned that case milestones are like, I think I remember reading that and using it.
Really? Wow.
Yes,
Very cool.
Yes.
Very cool. Thanks for your support.
Yes. Let's see. So when you started off, obviously, created the site, you're posting once a week. Like when you started off, like what was your goal? Like what were you trying to get out of it?
So I think there are a lot of other blogs that I looked up to, and David's being one of them. And I thought these guys are pretty cool, and it would be nice to do something similar to them. So giving back and simplifying other people's journeys was definitely a factor. There was another one that I did, I remember, called time zone ID keys or something like that, which is just a bunch of ID keys, and that was very hard to get a hold of. So I did a post about that. But also, I think I really wanted to create something. I really wanted to have something that was my own and out in the domain. So I think the building and creating something of my own was a factor, and then also kind of giving back to the community, helping others throughout their journey. But kind of similar to David, I wasn't thinking about creating a personal brand whatsoever. And it's something that I've inadvertently got quite a lot of experience with now, but it was never really a goal of mine starting out.
Yeah. And when you, when did you start salesforceben.com?
2014. Early 2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
So David said, oh, sorry, go ahead, David.
Yeah. So I probably bumped into you shortly after you started your site, Ben. And like a lot of people sometimes ask me like, hey, what are your tips for starting a site? I'm thinking of starting one. And in the back of my head, I like hear this a lot. And then, I can tell like, months down the road, nothing really comes out of it. But like with you, Ben, like we talked about it and you took it so far. And I just think
Yeah.
that's so fascinating. Like just the drive and ambition and like the passion you had for it. Like it is beautiful. I'm glad we're here together.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, cheers, David.
And Ben, so David said, and might have been joking a little bit, but it took like 2 years before anybody read it. Like for you, you started in 2014. How long before you felt like you were getting traction?
I think actually, surprisingly, it was quite quickly. And the reason is, I think because I was writing about topics that weren't written about before. So recurring milestones, I think at that time was quite a new feature. And you had the Salesforce documentation, which, can be a bit hit and miss sometimes, not a lot of images or a very descriptive way of helping you implement it. So because I was doing something like that and, people would click through on Google, which helped my authority get better, I think it actually ramped up quite quickly. And I think, that's a lesson for people watching today. It's always better to focus on a niche that hasn't been done before, which isn't always the easiest thing to focus on. But, if you want to ramp up quickly, then yeah, that's the way to go.
Right. One of the things is we were preparing for this. One of the things that I was thinking about, particularly with Salesforce Ben, is right. You are providing, you and your team and Lucy and everybody who works on the site is providing content to Salesforce users, and a lot of content, right? Like if you Google, as a Salesforce professional, if you Google how to do case milestones in Salesforce, it's like you're going to get the Salesforce documentation, you're going to get the Salesforce Ben article on it, and you're going to get some other stuff, right? The thing that occurred to me is like if somebody today tried to do exactly what you did in 2014, like be the go-to for Salesforce admin questions, it probably wouldn't work because you filled the space, right? Like that niche has been filled. So you, as somebody who's trying to build a personal brand, like you need to find a niche that hasn't been filled yet.
Yeah, and I think we've kind of initially it was kind of admin focused, and the site is still very admin focused. We don't have as many developer resources as David does, or some other great blogs out there. But the thing we're focusing on at the moment is, even though the blog is Salesforce Ben, most of the content is actually powered by guest posters.
Yep.
And it does surprise me the amount of niches that are still out there. So, for example, I spoke to a guy briefly over email, I think his name was Ankit, who came up with a blog called Forcepreneur, which is talking about entrepreneurship in Salesforce, people starting companies, people starting apps, which a lot of people, I'm sure, aspire to do. So I thought that was a great niche. So although there are a lot of blogs now, there wasn't as many when I was starting, I think there's still a lot out there, and it's just kind of finding that market that you want to focus on.
I got a take on this one too. I think is interesting. Like so we both started 2014 or earlier. A number of years have passed, and I actually kind of think blogs are dying as a medium for this. Like if you search up a question on Google, like how do I like change the battery on my car? Like the first result's no longer going to be a blog post. It's going to be like a cut of a YouTube video. Mm. And like as more mediums evolve, I feel like it opens up whole new worlds of niches. Like if I had to start over today, I don't think I'd make a blog. Like I'd just like go straight to YouTube or Instagram. I don't know, whatever's next, whatever the kids are doing,
Well, it's funny because sorry, go ahead, Ben.
No, I think I saw you post your first YouTube video the other day, David. Maybe not the
That's
first,
embarrassing.
but
that's great. Embarrassing.
What doing so.
We were just talking about that before you came on, Ben. The video. What was David? What was the name of it?
My best one is it's called "Steal My Resume." Just this huge clickbait where I like dive into like every line of my resume.
And you did the one that IPO. I saw, the IPO one. Yeah. Talk about that a little bit, because one of the things I wanted to, particularly with you, David, is like you've got such a clear voice and personality and point of view that comes through. And like I said before, when we started this up, I was talking about the IPO video, the blog post about certs, the elephant room, and there's a really strong point of view that you don't see in many industry blog thought leader personal brands. So like, was that a conscious choice, or talk about that?
I think I've been fortunate in my career to work at companies where like I can give my unbiased, unfiltered, sometimes controversial thoughts, and like I was never punished at work. And so that's kind of like continued to snowball into today. I could see people who come from different backgrounds, like maybe people from consulting is maybe the one I think about most, where it's like you kind of have to be careful what you say. Like if I had my own independent consultancy, like I wouldn't necessarily write a lot of the blog posts that I do, you know. So that's an interesting perspective. That's actually why I know in my heart that I could never be a consultant as well. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say one of the things that I find, you know, with consulting is it's really important to have a point of view, right? Mm-hmm. Like consultants get this reputation as like, you know, you could do it this way on the one hand, or on the other hand, you could do it this way, and they never actually give any point of view or any advice. You know, maybe there's a level of like sort of tone involved that you got to get the tone right in order to do that. But as I was reading some of your stuff, I was like, no, I mean, that's like a consulting skill, right? You're not just giving the information, you're bringing it in a memorable way with a clear point of view.
Thank you.
So you're ready to go, you're ready to quit your job and go solo now. So
yeah, thanks.
So one of the things that you all mentioned at the beginning, and Ben, you wrote a great post, and you mentioned this, I think it was called 5 Simple Ways to Build Your Personal Brand. And you talked about consistency, right? Consistency being important. And David said he did once a week.
Yeah.
Ben, in that post, you said, I think the first year you posted 46 posts, which is six short of once a week.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Yeah. So talk about that. Talk about the consistency piece, and obviously it's important, but you know, I think when a lot of people start up, they might do a site and they do it for like 3 months and they don't get a lot of traction and they stop. Maybe they're surprised by how much work it is. Maybe they're discouraged by that nobody's reading it after 3 months. Talk about that a little bit, because I'm sure you had to push through that.
So just to kind of outline why consistency is important, because I think the most fundamental is you're building trust with an audience. And doing that, you know, 1, 2, 3, you know, let's say you do it 10 times in 3 months, you know, you might get a short-lived bit of trust, but of course, you know, going on, especially if you're a freelancer, not putting out consistently high quality posts, you know, will kind of hinder your ability to build a personal brand. And it is definitely tough to get through, you know, those first 3 months. I've seen quite a lot of blogs come and go in my 6 years running Salesforce Ben and being kind of networked with these other bloggers, and it is definitely hard. But you know, if you really want to build a successful brand, you do need to push past that. And I think one of the biggest things that people say they struggle to do is think of post ideas. And I was just, you know, whenever I thought of one, I would just write one down in a spreadsheet and, you know, come back to it and kind of work that way. Another thing I would say is focus on kind of a hub and spoke model. So I wrote a post, I think it was my second post, called 8 Essential Service Cloud Workflows. So it had kind of an overview, which is the hub, and then each one had a tutorial going off. So those are great because, you know, it's kind of one post, but it's, you know, it's actually spinning off into 9 or 10 different ones.
Yeah. And is your background, did most of your work at that point, was it around Service Cloud?
Yeah, Service Cloud was I was running an org which was sales and service, and service was kind of the biggest part. So that was where most of my experience came from.
Got it. One of the things, I think you've mentioned this in your post, one of the things that's interesting is, you know, people sometimes get hung up on like, well, I'm not an expert at this thing, therefore I can't post about it. But you mentioned like, well, you've got the experience of what it means to not know about this thing all the way. And in the way, you're going to do research anyway, right?
I think there's a couple of points there. So the first is, you know, if you're just starting out, and I'd only had 2 years experience, So I was quite familiar with the challenges, learning about object relationships, all of the kind of foundation administrator things. I knew the struggles, I knew the common pitfalls that I fell into. So I found it quite easy to write about that stuff and appeal to that beginner level audience. But I also think another thing, if you want to write about, let's say, a new Einstein product or something like that, but you've never worked with it, whenever I'm writing a post, I'm researching, ensuring what I'm saying is actually true, even if I can just freestyle it. And, I wrote a post the other day called "Why Are Salesforce US Salaries Higher Than the UK?" Because they are considerably, and I was like, must be cost of living, something like that. And, I've actually found out you guys have a much higher purchasing power. Quality of living is higher in some areas and things like that. And now I'm an expert on US salaries versus UK. So, so yeah, I think, through research, I think you can really become an expert in anything.
Yeah. And David, so when you started off, you mentioned, you were learning Apex. Did you have any of the kind of concerns or about not, you're writing something that you don't know, feel like you don't know yourself thoroughly?
Oh yeah, totally. I had no business writing most of those posts. I still feel like I have no business writing most of my posts. Like Salesforce world is so big. There's so much I don't know. And especially back then, but I did it anyways, because I didn't know any better. I wasn't knowledgeable enough to know how dumb I was. And so I did it. And that was such a big pro for me, because then I posted consistently, even through my ignorance. And I want to double down on that consistency thing. So Ben wrote that awesome blog post, top 5 tips for building a brand. I agree with every single word there, 100%. Now his consistency bit is the most important of all, in my opinion, because I posted for 2 years straight every week, right? No one read my blog. And I thought I had a brand when I started that blog. I was like, this is going to be a technical blog. I'm going to teach people how to code. Mm-hmm. But since I posted every week and with a variety of topics, just experimenting with things, my brand evolved quite differently over time, I'd say. One time I did a certifications post. I didn't know if anything would come out of it. And that happened to be super hot. One time I did an inspirational post, completely non-technical post in a technical blog. And that happened to be the best posts I ever did. And from then on, everything is just inspiration. Let's not talk about technical stuff anymore. That stuff takes longer to write anyways. So I think when you have consistency, you end up experimenting, and then your brand evolves in ways that you could have never predicted.
Interesting. So when you started that first couple years, what you said you thought you had a brand, but you didn't. What was missing at that point? What was missing then that you've hit on now?
So I thought I was creating a technical blog, which is this is how you code. This is the right way to code.
Here's how to do if loop or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But every time I meet someone, or every time I get feedback from someone who's telling me about my site, they never say, hey, you write great technical stuff. They say, thank you for inspiring me to give me the faith that I could do it, that I could try to become a developer. No one's going to say man, that if statement that you wrote, that's the right way to do it. No one ever tells me that. And then, so yeah, it completely pivoted my blog, and I would have never known had I not just, posted up this random stuff.
So now it's more I don't know if you'd categorize this way, but it's career advice for people who are aspiring to be developers.
Yeah, I think Salesforce. So. I honestly can't remember the last time I wrote a really technical post. And those posts take a long time to do too. So I'm really happy it's this way.
But you sell, you have courses, right?
That's right.
And are those courses technical?
Oh yeah, those courses are very technical. And those courses, I put so much time and energy into making them.
Interesting.
Which I'm glad. So I don't have to do it on my blog, because it's just here, just go there. I spent thousands of hours there to do that.
Yeah. And so Ben, it sounds like you, your thing took off, which is awesome. Do you look back at when you first started and see kind of an evolution in your personal brand, or how you think about it, or kind of any don't want to say mistakes from early on, but anything where you say, I wish I could have done that differently?
I think it's always very organic. I think similar with David, it's not like we set out on a certain path to go down, but it's been very organic, and I think I'm quite happy with the way the blog's turned out. It's the way we want the blog to be is kind of like a go-to resource for anything. And we don't dive too deep into one particular niche, but just covering everything. News, certifications, career advice. And a lot of that now is powered by guest posters, which means we get a lot from all over the ecosystem. And I've really never thought of it as building my personal brand. It has been fantastic that it's got me a personal brand, and I can kind of relate to freelancers wanting to build a personal brand, because with my consultancy, people have come through the blog and then known the name and things like that, which has been great. But I'm really focusing now on trying to build up other people's personal brands. I'm not too concerned with mine, which is a bit of a strange thing to say, because the blog is Salesforce Ben, and people still kind of thank me for blogs when they weren't written by me at all. So I try and tag the person in them when they do that, which kind of sucks a bit. But yeah, I'm a bit too far down that rabbit hole now. But
right.
It's I think people who are just starting up blogging, blogging on Salesforce Ben is a great way to expose yourself to a new audience, because people are always looking for new blogs and clicking through onto the author's site and things like that. So we're really focused on the guest posters now.
And one of the things that I see, which makes sense, a lot of people, when they're thinking about their personal brand or what they bring to the table, they're thinking about it in terms of like hard skills. A lot of times people are thinking about it in terms of like certifications or industries. And those are important dimensions. But, David, for you mentioned making the pivot or the adjustment of like, to go from a technical blog to a blog for people who want to be technical, right? It's still very close, but that distinction like changed a lot for you.
I think it's always super important to find a niche. And when you think you find that niche, cut it in half, make it even smaller. It gives you a real focus on what to write. And then as you build up that consistency, then you start experimenting and you expand past your core. Yeah, I say that now as I'm trying to kind of like build up a new brand, and it's really hard. It's really, really hard focusing on it. But I almost feel like if you start small and then you just put in all the reps, the consistency, you just keep posting. Like, I feel like you almost cannot fail because you're just going to learn each time from them. And it might take you 2 years like it did for me, but ultimately, it's worth it.
Well, it's interesting too, it's like sometimes you read business advice. Everybody talks about niche. You got a niche. And, I know I've done this, and I, have friends who own businesses or whatever, where you kind of sit in your office and you say, okay, what's my niche going to be? You sort of try to figure it all out before you do anything.
Yeah.
And, at least with you, David, it sounds like it was a process, right? You had an idea, you tried stuff.
Yeah.
Some of it worked, some of it didn't, and you just kept going.
Yeah. Now the analysis paralysis you mentioned is a big thing, because actually my current site is my second iteration of the site. My first iteration, I just sat there, really thought hard about my niche, thought hard about my analytics. I Googled like how to make a blog, and it's like, all right, here's how to get like 1,000 subscribers or whatever. And I just like followed all that checklist.
Yeah.
But I did not focus on just like pumping out quality content. I was like focused on everything else, and that site went nowhere. And so I scrapped that, and I'm just like, all right, I'm just going to post once a week and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And that's the one that took off.
Yeah. You say once a week is a lot.
It's a lot, but so some of those posts might just be like 2 sentences, or like there's a big post and I just like break it down into 5 of them. True. And so not only is it more manageable to post, but it's more manageable for people to read as well.
Yeah. See, my problem is, Ben, you mentioned you had the spreadsheet and you put the ideas in the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
See, I've got that down. The spreadsheet with the ideas. It's the second step of turning those into actual posts. I think there's a lot of people out there that are like that. It's like, you got ideas, but if you don't take action on them, you're not going to get any traction.
Yeah. I kind of like, I used to, I knew I wanted to get one out a week, and when you're tired and you've been working all day, and it's kind of like, ugh, do I have to? But I find I really enjoy it. Once I've got past those first two sentences and I'm really getting into it, I'm really enjoying it. So I think it is a bit of a struggle to get started. When you think you've got to write, I don't know, 300 to 800 words, whatever an average blog post is, it is a big task in front of you. But I think when you start, it's quite a nice feeling to be being productive, getting things done.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, in terms of wrapping up, I'm just looking at the time. We're about a half an hour now. David, to close us out, I'm going to give you the last word.
I'm so scared right now.
I know. I know. The pressure's on. There's a bunch of freelancers or aspiring freelancers listening. What's the one piece of advice?
Consistency, baby. All the way.
All right.
And really, really put some thought into what medium you go into. Maybe you spread it out. Blogging, Instagram, YouTube, podcasting.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? So that's such a great point. I'm not going to give you the last word. I want to say one more thing. It's interesting because we talked about blogging, and David, you said, video is a thing, right? But Ben, one of the things that I saw, you mentioned, I found out about this person through your, 5 Ways to Build a Personal Brand. I think his name's Christopher Hopper, the recruiter who posts on LinkedIn, like literally as LinkedIn status updates, right? You would never think that would be a format that would work. And it does. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's so basic. It's he hasn't spent ages building a website or something like that, but I'm sure for his personal brand and his business, I'm sure it's massive for him because it's just so authentic. It's just his stories from recruitment, just helping out people. So I'm sure he gets a lot from that.
Right, and it's like recruiting is there's tons of recruiters out there.
Exactly.
There's tons of recruiters out there, and people have been doing recruiting for a long time. It's like, it would have been so easy for him to be like, well, if this would work, somebody would have already done it, but he started it, and I don't know how long he's been doing it. I don't know him personally, and haven't been following him that long, but it's fantastic. And since since they are such short posts, he can, I'm assuming, increase the frequency.
And I think that's maybe one more thing to add is be creative, have fun with it. There's just so many avenues you can go down, and blogs aren't meant to be totally serious. It's a Salesforce ecosystem. They have cartoon characters as mascots, so just have fun with it.
Awesome. Well, this has been fantastic.
Man.
Thank you for having me, Brian. And good to see you, David.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Ben. Always good seeing you.